السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات. In a couple of nights that we had some talks about Ashoora, we covered some of the topics on the uniqueness of Ashoora. I will give some brief summary of what we discussed in the last sessions so we can continue tonight, inshallah. We mentioned that we are seeking a language to describe and to rationalize what the reality of Ashoora is. All of us have this experience that Ashoora is unique and exceptional. In other words, you cannot find a second event in the history of its type that is comparable to Ashoora in terms of everlasting growth that it had. There is no other incident that by the passage of the time becomes more and more significant to people and more attractive. Ashoora has gone through such an amazing course of growth. So uniqueness of Ashoora is very apparent. The goal is here to find a way to explain it with a mundane and worldly vocabulary and language, so everybody can share that belief. We mentioned that there are some explanations here and there we hear when we say what is that makes Ashoora unique. There are some answers that we wanted to remove those as acceptable. One of them is the level of brutality and the stage of criminal act was so immense that made the scene of Ashoora unique and exceptionally unrepeatable. Yes, the level of criminal act was very, very high, but that did not make it unique. When you browse the history of mankind, even the history of the Muslim history, you will see that there are many events that are comparable in the extent of the brutality and the depth of the criminal act that is being conducted. It's hard to prove that the uniqueness of Ashoora is because of that issue. Some others have said that the reason is not the brutality, but it is the beauty of the other side of this battlefield. On this one side of the camp of Imam Hussein, you will see the best of the time. Every single one of them is a master of beauty and attractiveness. So that makes this event unique. That is very true. However, when you compare that event with some other events, you will find there are some other incidents in the history that also in those events, the best of the time have been involved, like what happened during the time of Holy Prophet or the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam. In many of those incidents also you will find awliyaullah on one side and the enemy on the other side. It's hard again to show that this is really the essence of uniqueness of Karbala and Ashoora. There is another explanation that emphasizes on the ugly portrait of Yazid, and by emphasizing on how bad Yazid was, tries to prove that the beauty of Imam Hussein stands out and becomes a unique event. Again, this is one of the worst ways of defending Ashoora. It's not a good taste of choice to describe the beauty and the attractiveness of Imam Hussein and his camp by emphasizing on the negative attributes of the enemy. It's really not right to do. We believe that Yazid was a very corrupt criminal, but in the history of Islam, we have seen figures that their damage to Islam and their danger to Islam was much, much more immense and larger than what Yazid had. Mostly and mainly, we refer to Muawiyah. And we discussed in detail that Muawiyah definitely was much more dangerous to Islam and did more harm to Islam than Yazid. Yazid even didn't have a time or chance. Imam Hussein didn't give him one night to rule as a ruler and do the damage that he could have done. Whereas Imam Hussein stayed in the position of Imamat for 10 years, and in entirety, Muawiyah was in power for about 40 years and did an immense damage to Islam. So Yazid is not really the reason for the upraise of Imam Hussein, and it's not the reason for uniqueness of Ashoora. Yazid is only an opportunity, an opening. That's a very brief moment of history that was given to the Ahlul Bayt to do what they have planned for it for a long, long time. And that was the only opportunity and the opening that had occurred, and they took the best advantage of that moment, and that was about it. The rest of it is really the Ashoora was a very well pre-planned movement. It's a turning point of the history of mankind. We refer to some of the aspects of the depth of the planning behind Ashoora in the past discussions. And also we mentioned the contribution of other individuals in forming the whole history of Karbala. Before Karbala, we mentioned, started from Adam all the way to Holy Prophet, and then Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Hassan, Fatima Zahra, and all of them, and then after Ashoora, again, all the way to the end until Wali al-Asr, every single one of them has put so much stress and invested in the issue of Karbala and Ashoora. The Karbala and Ashoora is not just and only about Imam Hussein. It's about the whole movement of the prophets from day one to the end of the world. So that is like a plan that has been worked on for a long, long time. And it had to be done that way, and it was meant to be this way to affect it and change the course of what happened throughout the whole history of the prophets. Almost all of those bloods went in vain. And we discussed it how all the sacrifices that they offered to humanity really at the end of the day didn't stay. It helped the humanity to move on and grow better and better, but the price was not really fairly paid for the blood that was sacrificed and the effort that was put into this thing. Most of the cases you see the prophets pass away in a generation or two. Their message has been erupted, manufactured, fabricated, manipulated, changed, and then at the end of the day, after 2-3 generations, it's very hard to distinguish this, to find anything in common with this and the original message. And that was the trend all the way throughout the history. And in Islam, for the first time, Allah saved the text, which was Quran. But again, in Islam also, the interpretation and the way that the people learn and interpreted the Islamic teachings of Quran was again under that problem of being deviated from the truth. What happened in Ashoora was that Ashoora generated and created a nation that this nation guaranteed the everlasting growth of the movement. Remember, Ashoora happens in the time that there is no tribune for Imam. There is no way of distributing his message. There is no communication means for him. So the plan was that this event takes place in a fashion that the best possible way of existing means being utilized for transferring this message to the people, and then do it in a manner that stays over and over the time, and it doesn't die out. The difference was in the Ashoora, the plan was to convey the message in a way that it doesn't die out, and the time doesn't stop it from existence. We mentioned that in the event of Ashoora, a nation was born. Before Ashoora, this nation, which we call it Shia, this nation was something in conceptual terms. Shia was with Holy Prophet from day one as a concept, as an idea, as a way of looking at Islam and looking at Quran. But it didn't materialize as a nation, as an ummah, as a group of people who live and they are backbone of a culture. It didn't happen until Ashoora really gave birth to that nation. What attached all the individuals of that nation together was the mourning and the commemoration of this amazing event of Ashoora. The event of Ashoora caused the people to attach to each other and communicate in the same direction for just one major topic. That their agenda was the separation of Kitabullah wa Itrat. ایتونی به دوات و بیات اکتب لکم ما ان تمسکتم به لم تضلوا بعدی ابدا, in which Holy Prophet mentions انی تارکم فیکم الثقلین کتاب الله و اطرتی اهل بیتی و انه لا یفترقا حتی یردا علی الحوض. There are two grand inheritance that I'm leaving after myself for you. These two are never ever separable. They are like a head and the rest of the body. You cannot separate them and then keep any of them alive. They are alive only when they are together. And these two grand inheritance was separated from day one at the time of Holy Prophet when he was still alive. From early stages of Islamic movement that I don't get to elaborate on that. Anyways, Holy Prophet knew this very, very clearly, that it's going to happen. People are going to try to separate this head from the body. And that's what exactly happened in the event of Saqifah. Now, we need time to send that message to generations in future, to grow that idea and to introduce that event and tell the people what happened and what is the problem. In order to be able to continue conveying this message, we needed a nation who moves and carries over this message. For the first time in the event of Ashoora, the history was not written by the conqueror and the winner party. It was written by the defeated. It never happens. Usually the history is written by those who win a battle, and then they are in power and the other party has no means to say his story. So they tell the story the way that they want it. And that is the problem, that the history is more than anything else of some deviation from the real truth. In the event of Ashoora, the plan was that like 30,000 people minimum are gathered in that event, all of them fighting for the enemy of Imam Hussein, out of which maybe 15,000 of them have already signed allegiance and invited Imam Hussein to Kufa. So they have some sort of affiliation and some sort of interest in Imam Hussein al-Bayt. However, the turn of the situation turned them against, and they now standing in the opposite side and fighting Imam Hussein. These people are all messengers of the event of Karbala. Now the event has to be planned so meticulously and completely effective that everybody is impacted by it. And then there is no way that somebody can deviate it and change the course of, you know what happened in the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam? After all the effort that Imam Ali put into Islam, with his history so bright and so amazing, Muawiyah managed to make him look like a person against true Islam and Quran so badly that every single prayer that was held in that time as a part of the ritual of the prayer was to curse Imam Ali alayhi salam. That is how important the propaganda machine of Muawiyah was and how significant it was. Now you see why Yazid and not Muawiyah. It's not about Yazid being worse than Muawiyah. No, not at all. It's about the opportunity that appearance of Yazid opens that the time of Muawiyah didn't get that. That's a blood that is supposed to stay and not go to vain. And that is why we call it Sar Allah. This is the blood that the price of it is now being paid properly. Different from all the bloods of the before. See, some people emphasize on the state of being oppressed and the mazlumiyat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Except Imam Hussein is mazlum, and that is what makes Ashoora go on, move on. Yes, that is true. Imam Hussein is very mazlum, very much so. However, if you look at the event that happened to Imam Hassan, you will not find less mazlumiyat in that. The oppression against Imam Hassan was not much less than Imam Hussein. Think about it. They signed a contract, a peace treaty, and then did whatever they did after the peace treaty with Imam Hassan. And from inside his army, they tried to kill him, right? At least in the event of the Karbala, Imam Hussein is appearing as a fighter, as an armed fighter, which is fighting against, it's challenging the whole government. He says, I'm not going to played allegiance with Yazid, whereas Imam Hassan had signature of peace treaty with him, with Muawiyah. Which one of them you think is more oppressed? It's not about it's only about the opportunity that was given to the movement of the whole prophethood up to that moment, and that is why it's so important to remember Ashoora. This is the secret behind the fact that Ashoora is not only unique, it's also immortal. It's everlasting. How can we make a social event, a historical cross-section, to stay alive forever? How can we make that happen? Think about world wars that we had like 50 years ago. How many of us, or of those who were even massacred by those events, nowadays on a regular basis remember that millions of people that were killed in those events, even 50 years later? Now compare that to an event that took place 1400 years ago, and the first visitors who paid the tribute to the Ashoora massacre were Atiyeh and Jaber. Two people were the first visitors who commemorated practically, technically, the event of Ashoora. The last report that I saw last year in Arba'in, in the Karbala, they were attending 12 million people. You compare two people to 12 million people in just one incident. And that goes on throughout the whole year almost. The peak of it is in Arba'in and in Ashoora, but it's ongoing. God knows how many millions of people love just to come and pay their tributes to Karbala, to Imam Hussein. See how the things have changed. What a magnificent growth. That nation that I mentioned, the nation of Shia, that was born by Karbala, at some time, at the earliest stages, was like 5-10 people. Nowadays is the fastest growing sect of Islam. And as we go along, this nation gets more power and grows more, stronger. We have a lot of shortcomings. We shouldn't have the illusion of we are the perfect sons or children of God and we are the best. That's not the case necessarily. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going there. I'm not saying that because we are Shia, that we are the perfect people, like the Jewish people think that they are the only the chosen. No, it's not. Doesn't cut. It's not what I'm trying to say. But this nation that was born in Karbala has a very huge responsibility and has a very valuable mean to carry on that responsibility. In order to have a movement continue throughout the time, you have some requirements. You need to have something. One of them is a vehicle that can carry that message throughout the generations. And remember, all the previous and even the further later events that imams and prophets were involved, the file was closed at that time. When Imam Hassan was murdered, the file of Imam Hassan's activity was closed. Imam Ali the same. The prophets the same. The file was completed because that was ended by their personality. And it just stopped right there. The only file that stayed open is the file of Imam Hussein. That's the only file that stayed open, never closed. It's very delicate concept. Please pay more attention to try to convey this. At the event of Karbala, one thing happened that never you can find it in any other incidents. When Imam Hussein loses the last soldier before Ali Asghar becomes Shaheed, Imam Hussein is narrated that stands there and says that very, very famous saying, "Hal min nasirin yansuruni," or yansuruna, "Hal min zabin yadu." This message was the secret that Ashoora will find its audience down the road in the generations to come. There are more soldiers to join Abu Abdullah. The battle is not completed. The battle is still there. He is Sarullah. That's the blood that the price has not been paid off. And there is a nation who's seeking that blood price. That nation is not going to sit down, as has not ever sit down. Remember, people lost their arms and limbs to just go and pay their tribute to Imam Hussein. There is a secret into it. The soldiers of Imam Hussein are still to come, are still yet to come. They are working on themselves to get the qualification to become the soldier of Abu Abdullah, because he doesn't accept any Joe Blow from the street to become his soldier, his fighter. No, you have to be qualified in order to be a good soldier who deserves that master. In order to be the soldier of Imam Hussein, you have to work hard to get to that point. So that is why we need time. We need generations after generation to condense that qualification as we go along. That's what makes the event of Karbala everlasting, because every generation that comes has a better understanding from the secrets of message of Abu Abdullah. That's why they are more committed to that message. This is important. Imam Hussein still is hiring more soldiers. That's what he meant by Hal min nasirin yansuruni. He's still open. It's open. You go and register with him and become his soldier. He has an assignment for you today. Today, in San Diego, not in Karbala 1400 years ago. Today, you have an assignment from Abu Abdullah Hussein, and you do it if you want to, if you choose to be his soldier, his fighter. You have something to do. You have an appointment. You have an assignment. Commemoration of Ashoora. That is what conveys the message generation after generation after generation. My time is up, unfortunately. I cannot elaborate on that, but I have to just briefly add one more thing and leave it open till tomorrow, inshallah. A very important component and ingredient of this whole plan is going to be discussed tomorrow, inshallah, and that is the relationship between the Ashoora event and the disappearance of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. That's very important. If you cannot connect these two very rationally, very precisely, and you cannot explain these two hand in hand, you cannot explain any of them fully. Ashoora only can be understood on the light of disappearance or ghaibah of Imam al-Mahdi. And the disappearance of Imam al-Mahdi can be explained and clarified only under the light of the plan of Ashoora. Inshallah, if I'm alive, contingent to the life, tomorrow I will discuss the relationship between these two significant part of this ummah of Shia. Why is it so important? We will inshallah address it tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.